everyone. We're talking about the Pisces full moon lunar eclipse, which is happening on Sunday, the 7th of September. It's a deep emotional release point in regards to old, outdated, emotional, unconscious patterns which don't serve us any longer. There's a huge ending implied here, but also a huge release, and through the release, a certain freedom that really wants to come to us. But just on a detail level for a moment, and to tick off those boxes of what kind of transits I'm talking about all of this, what kind of planetary movements are reflecting this pattern. On the one hand, just a couple of days ago, on the 1st of September, Saturn re-entered Pisces. Saturn is still retrograde right now, and it went back into Pisces. Remembering, of course, that Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, and 29 degrees of Pisces is thus also the ultimate last ending of this journey of consciousness, which then begins again, the infinite Ouroboros on 0 degrees of Aries. And Saturn dancing on this degree right now, as I and so many others will have talked about so much already, signals so much this huge collective ending, but also a huge ending in regards to the entire Saturn cycle. Saturn takes roughly 30 years. This is our Saturn return cycles, and thus Saturn also takes 30 years through the zodiac. So the patterns that are ending here implying a deep ending of karmic patterns. Saturn, a lot of time in karma, where karmic contracts, connections that don't serve our collective or personal individual evolution any longer, are to be surrendered to the great cosmic ocean, surrendered with grace, compassion and forgiveness. Saturn at the same time shows us how hard of a lesson that can be. It's very easy words to say, it's much harder to do. It's very easy to understand mentally, and in that way maybe also try to bypass these things. But the Pisces archetype on that deep fundamental level of our psyche really asks us to fully embody this process of feeling, of emotion. Anyhow, more on Saturn in a moment. The other really significant thing is that just as this full moon eclipse is building and perfecting on Sunday, Uranus is stationing retrograde. So Uranus is stationing right now, it barely moves, it seems like it doesn't move in the sky, and that's usually when a planetary energy is very pronounced on the collective field. Uranus, just like all the other outer planets, has just been newly in Gemini in this case, and will also go back to Taurus, just like Neptune and Saturn go back to Pisces from Aries. Uranus is opposed to Saturn when Saturn can also signify the conditioning of society, the conditioning of societal patterns, of ancestral judgments or structures that maybe bind us in a way where we feel really bound to linear time and linear karma and the inescapable nature of that, where Saturn and Pisces might create a huge yearning for freedom, for release, for release because we're not longer carrying this emotional Pisces baggage Saturn around with us. And contrasting Uranus to the Saturn archetype reveals this other part of our psyche, a higher, a deeper function that shows us our drive to be authentic and truly free, truly liberated in our authentic self-expression. And in that way also liberated from societal norms and pressures and conditioning. Uranus, as opposed to Saturn, brings usually very dramatic, sudden change and unexpected disruptions, which ultimately always have the deeper intention to reveal a greater freedom and greater possibility of what life is and can be to us. But at first, their impact might be shocking because of where and how our human personality, ego identity, is resisting change. Uranus is all about change, and as much as we can say that we love change and change is good and it leads to the better, it still creates a fundamental sense of unease because it means leaving the status quo and the stability that Saturn promises. So these two movements are very interesting and tie deeply into the full moon moment. And then lastly, just taking off the transits, we've got Mercury in Virgo, together with the Sun, of course, and Mercury and the Sun are approaching the South Node in Virgo. The lunar eclipse is happening on 15 degrees of Pisces, close to the North Node. Talking also about this connection, Rahu and Ketu in Jyotish astrology, of this evolutionary path, this karmic axis of our being, and where and how are there maybe karmic patterns that are ripe and ready to be released, which the South Node indicates, talking about the Virgo archetype, and where and how are there karmic patterns or new impulses, new desires being birthed that propel us into greater evolution and greater growth, greater change, greater life with the North Node. What the North Node signifies here in Pisces. And then the very last thing, the moon is making a very beautiful trine aspect to Jupiter in the middle degrees of Cancer. It's quite close. I think it's on 18 degrees of Cancer. So it's very, very close aspect and very beautiful and harmonious, because Jupiter is also the natural ruler of Pisces, the traditional ruler of Pisces. And Jupiter is also said to be exalted in Cancer, the sign of home and emotional connection and family and belonging. Revealing also where and how maybe our yearning, our seeking, our questing, which Jupiter signifies in the dreams and visions, but also the longing that it can activate within us, which this year is focused so much around emotional safety, emotional containment, emotional nourishment, the deep divine feminine yin approach to life, which is getting so squashed in our current day and age. Just like already in the mythology of the ancient Greeks, it was beginning to be really like crushed. The mythology that talks about the Cancer archetype is Hercules crushing the crab with his feet. It's just like, oh, all of these annoying feelings and emotions. Here's the solar hero with all the power, and he wants to like, no, that's in the way. We still tend to do this a lot. And it shows us when how the medicine of Cancer is one of the most profound and important medicines for our current age, and has been since many, 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 many years and decades. And it deepens this necessity to feel, to really hold space for everything that wants to be processed. Tying it back in with Saturn and Pisces. Saturn likes to suppress and deny and control, judge and condemn, where there's also guilt and shame. And with the overwhelming, chaotic, confusing, mysterious, nebulous waters and haze and mists of the astral currents that Pisces brings into our life, can be the desire to cut away from all of this, to suppress all of this overwhelming emotion, the overwhelming ocean of emotion, and to just do the other Pisces thing, to disappear, to avoid, to try to transcend, to spiritually bypass, to numb ourselves with substances, or with all kinds of other things that we can numb ourselves with as human beings. And again, Saturn's on the last slack in Pisces, and we've got the lunar eclipse in Pisces. Lunar eclipse is, of course, the culmination of a lunar cycle, of a moon cycle. The lunar eclipse is perfect. It's exact over most parts of Asia, Southern Asia, India, Middle East, even here in Eastern Europe, Southeastern Europe, you'll be able to observe it. A true blood moon moment. And just like every full moon is a moment of deep release, an emotional ending, an emotional culmination that then ends in an exhale and can release its energy again, a full moon is like this, just supercharged. And it ties in these also unconscious emotional patterns, if we want to talk about the North Node in a way that it would signify karma, then where and how are there emotional patterns ending right now that are much older than just from your one incarnation in this moment. And that can mean both your ancestral line, that can mean your collective society field in which you have been born, or also your own soul level and prior lifetimes. But also all the ways and patterns in which we maybe try to avoid, try to escape, try to distract ourselves. The fear and resistance to being fully embodied, and here is a big thing in the Pisces energy. The desire is to float and to melt and to unify but often out of matter, out of space-time. And Saturn really puts us on the cross and shows us, no, you are in space-time, you are in this body, like it or not. You are born to these parents, like it or not. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to go into the one side of Pisces, escapism, avoidance, or victim mentality, feeling oh so poor and little and sorry for yourself? Or are you going to embrace the other side of Saturn, the integrity and self-responsibility and the ability to control? Yes, not the current of reality, not all the cosmic waters, you'll hold on to them, you'll feel like you're drowning, you're exhausting all your energy, but controlling Saturn, the inner level of where and how we hold room for our emotional processes, for our inner child, for all the ways we feel overwhelmed and feel confused, and to not let that pull us into victim mentality, to not let that pull us too much into states of self-pity, but to see that, like, okay, I maybe feel this way on one level, but Saturn, how can I take responsibility in this moment about it to change things? The South Node in Virgo shows us Mercury also there, where and how are there mental patterns and mental perspectives, where we also limit reality. Virgo can go so much into the detail and can develop so much skill with that, and it's a very mental energy. And on the other side also Uranus is stationing on the first degree of Gemini. So these two Mercury signs showing us where and how are the mental patterns and maybe also routines that don't longer serve you, unconscious emotional patterns that are maybe actually more distracting or avoiding you from your deepest soul's calling, from who in your deepest essence, which is also Pisces, really call to you, that are really, truly, deeply meaningful. Where and how are maybe emotional patterns ending, also the Saturn karma contracts ending, in regards to you playing small, you feeling victimized, you avoiding your deeper calling, and where and how this can lead to deep feelings of meaninglessness, emptiness, which is a huge collective thing right now. Saturn on the last degrees of Pisces. It'll go retrograde to 24, and then it will go back into Aries on the 14th of February next year and have its exact conjunction with Neptune finally on like end of February, 20th of February. So the next 5 months, Saturn is still in Pisces. And this is a huge karmic washing machine. It is really about a deep, deep, deep energetic release. It's a release that ties back, yes, 30 years. Yes, to all the Saturn and Capricorn and Aquarius patterns. Also where and how we compare, where and how we feel inferior, where and how we don't feel good enough. And where and how the moment of this lunar eclipse, before we'll have the solar eclipse in Virgo in 2 weeks' time, on 29 degrees of Virgo, can really imbue us with this deepest lesson of Pisces, which is all about trust, surrender, faith, and achieving that through compassion and forgiveness. Sometimes I feel like I'm repeating myself because I say almost more or less all these 5 words with the Pisces archetype again and again and again. And they are so easy to say. Again, it's things that are so easy to vocalize and so easy to understand. And we tend to fool ourselves, another Pisces quality, where we believe our own illusions and delude ourselves, and then feel disappointed and disillusioned by reality, by God, by this lover or this situation. It's like, oh, how can spirit leave me alone like this? When in truth, actually, we delude ourselves with the projections of our deepest yearnings and meanings that we project onto reality. That Pisces will always have to disillusion us again, so that we can really come back to this clarity of essence and walking through this emptiness, or also this overwhelming chaos, to find the clarity that we can't find it in the mind. The mind is a amazing servant but terrible master. The nervous system patterns that keep us trapped in our body, keep us trapped in limiting emotional realities that are not aligned with spirit, that are not aligned with truth and grace and compassion and forgiveness and surrender. And where and how do we have to forgive? We're giving it away. We're giving it back to the ocean. We're giving it back to life because we don't want to carry this anymore. Whatever this is for you personally. What kind of emotional patterns are ending here that block you from feeling a greater connection to spirit, to a deep sense of meaning and purpose? Where and how is all of the mental chatter, including maybe a lot of organizational skills and to-do lists and things that seem practical and useful, that's very Virgo, actually also detracting you? Where, like I noticed this so much with myself the last couple of days, getting lost in small things and researching this and doing this and trying to organize that, when none of these things are really essential. And Saturn always wants to bring us to essence. It's a pruning energy. And it's first painful, it cuts away, but so that the rose bush, that the apple tree can blossom with much more fruit, much more flower, can grow more healthy, more vital, more strong, more integer for a longer time. So the Saturn energy is pruning. A lunar eclipse is also a huge release. It's a pruning, it's an ending. It might be overwhelming. But how are all of these things, whichever might be occurring in your life, redirecting you to a clarity of spirit, to a clarity of essence, to what is this life really about for you? And where and how can you meet yourself? And through that also others with love, with compassion, and with forgiveness. To see that we're all on this weird, mysterious journey on planet Earth, and it might be very scary and confusing and overwhelming, especially in these times. It's easy to lose faith and trust and surrender and hope in these times. But this is also what Saturn in the next 2 years in Aries will be about, but also what it still really wants to install in us here over the coming 5 months of where and how is my deepest integrity, Saturn, not in any illusionary belief that I can control outer reality ultimately. I can manifest whatever I want. You can be whatever. That's very Pisces. It's fluid, but it's not in form, and it is an illusion. No, you can't be anything you want. Nobody can. You can be many things, and you can exercise your free will and your agency with Saturn, discipline, patience, humility to achieve great heights. But accepting limitation can actually be the greatest freedom to really give you back that pruning energy that wants to crystallize, that wants to form, that wants to give clarity. And where and how is this lunar eclipse inviting you to find all of these things? And where and how is again and again and again these deep moments of release, of exhaling, of not knowing where the path, where the river, where the current will take you and me and all of us together, is actually helping you to find Saturn and Pisces, this deepest level of it, the inner alignment Saturn, the responsibility Saturn, the control Saturn, to make it a practice of discipline and devotion, to find alignment with spirit, and to find a root and your essence, your grounded integrity in that for the coming Saturn cycle ahead. Once Saturn is in Aries, the story will be all so much about action, instincts, taking charge, having courage, assuming leadership. All of these things that involve us so much with external reality and that seem so very real, that are so very real. And they're very important that we believe them and play by them, that we play this theater game of planet life and planet Earth, human life, planet Earth. But the end of Saturn and Pisces is so much about where and how is our deepest truth and essence, actually in the understanding that ultimately we're not in control, and it's still okay because we're connected with spirit. We're connected with God. God is whatever universe, whatever name you want to give it. No matter what happens, no matter what happens to our mind or our body, no matter how old or young we become in this human form, in space-time, that the essence, that this is where we find integrity, this is where we find that our only thing that we can really control is our emotional reaction, how we hold space for our emotional processes. And from that place, we find enough breathing space and distance before Saturn and Aries the next 2-3 years will take us so much and grab us and make us believe that we have to take charge and go after every instinct instantly. And it really feels like a last deep breathing pause the next couple of months, starting with this eclipse, to really embody this deeper awareness within us for the coming 30 years or so, that there's always a space in between before we engage with external reality, that this connection here, this is the most important. And we can always have 1 second of pause before we react and instinctively jump into something. And that this is where freedom, this is where sovereignty truly lies. Because otherwise we're just creatures of habit. We're just conditioned beings. Saturn, we're just a programmed by our upbringing, by our parents, by our ancestors, by our culture. And in that way we're not free. And there we see also this interplay. Saturn is the boundary, but the boundary that actually opens us. He's esoterically also considered the dweller on the threshold, right? He tests us. Our karmas test us and limit us before we're ready and able to connect on this deeper level to Uranus, our authentic, unique, liberated essence, right? And then even higher or deeper, Neptune and Pluto. Saturn tests us, but this test, this limitation, these deep, confusing emotional processes of Pisces, they are initiating us into what it truly means to be truly sovereign, and to realize that in our awareness of not being in control on some fundamental level, we can actually achieve the greatest amount of control. And in recognizing all the ways that we have been conditioned, we can become deconditioned and free. And where and how we have been bound to time and karma, the consequences of our actions, the repeating cycles again and again and again and again, we can end these cycles right away with forgiveness, with giving these energies back to spirit. And that we're not just freeing others and the world to be as it is, but also ourselves. And only from that place of true acceptance of reality as it is, humankind as it is, planet Earth as it is right now, with all the corruption and confusion and overwhelm and war, that only in the acceptance of what it is, we can really begin to change things. Because as long as we resist what is, externally in the world, internally within us and our relationships, as long as we resist, we're running after illusions. And we're creating suffering, and we feel victimized and lost. Is the other flip side of Pisces there. Only through the acceptance of what is can we begin to change things. But to accept what is means we have to feel our feelings, and through that also come to a process of deeper embodiment that then can also release these stuck emotional patterns and energies back to source, back to the cosmic ocean, back to the Divine Mother, back to grace, back to Christ consciousness. These are all different worlds for the highest level of Pisces consciousness, the ultimate reality as it is. So yeah, some short words on this Pisces eclipse. I hope you make the most of it. I hope it helps you to find realignment with your essence, with the clarity of who you are, to help you to bring compassion for yourself, for all the ways that you lose yourself in your mental patterns and the nervous system stimulation, and that this essence can then really guide you on how to move forward and what it is you really want to dream in this reality. Pisces is the dream. What dream do you want to dream? What healing do you want to give to the world? Where and how can you become a channel for love and compassion and forgiveness and grace, a brief embodiment of these cosmic energies for the rest of humankind? Where and how can we channel this energy creatively, creative practices are so good and vital for Pisces energy, to really channel this ineffable, intangible, transcendental energy through poems, through writing, through singing, through dancing, through cooking, through whatever it might be, right? To give it form, that which is usually so formless. And we will always feel disillusioned with our inability to truly channel the ineffable transcendence that we perceive, our artistic visions that we see, into form, because it'll be bound to form. It is meant to be limiting. It's never full. It's never fully complete. But to see that in your essence you are. In your essence, everything that you've always been is. And to also, with this eclipse, surrender and release any belief and any emotional pattern that tells you otherwise. So, thank you so much for listening. As always, you can reach out to me and meet me for a one-on-one session to deep dive into how these patterns, how this eclipse portal, the coming weeks is playing out for you personally, how and where the Saturn transit is falling in your chart and really shows this ending of huge karmic patterns in your life over the coming months. And apart from this, let me know what's happening in your life. How do you feel with this eclipse? I'd love to hear from you and how you feel about it all. Sending you much love. Bye bye.